In a world where military bases operate on strict protocols and unwavering trust, sometimes the most dangerous secrets hide in plain sight. What happens when a single tattoo becomes the key to unraveling a conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of command? When Staff Sergeant Maria Gonzalez rolled up her sleeve during a routine medical examination, she had no idea that the small design etched into her skin would expose a network of deception that had been operating under everyone's nose for years. This is the story of how one woman's past collided with present-day military operations in ways no one could have predicted. It's about loyalty tested, friendships shattered, and the price of keeping secrets in a place where transparency can mean the difference between life and death. What started as an ordinary day at Fort Davidson would become the beginning of the most shocking revelation the base had ever witnessed. The simple logistics patch on her uniform told one story, but the tattoo on her arm told another entirely different tale that would shake the very foundation of everything her fellow soldiers believed they knew about the woman they had served alongside for 3 years. The morning sun cast long shadows across Fort Davidson as Staff Sergeant Maria Gonzalez made her way to the medical facility. Her brown boots clicked against the concrete walkway in a steady rhythm that matched her heartbeat. 3 years at this base had made this walk routine, but today felt different somehow. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change, though she attributed it to the mandatory medical examination she was dreading. Maria had always been punctual, a trait that served her well in the logistics division where precision and timing meant the difference between mission success and failure. Her uniform was pressed to perfection, the logistics patch on her left shoulder a symbol of pride and dedication to her role in keeping the base supplied and operational. At 28, she had earned the respect of her peers through hard work and an unwavering commitment to excellence. The medical facility buzzed with its usual morning activity. Soldiers moved in and out of examination rooms while medics prepared for another day of routine checkups and minor treatments. Maria checked in with the receptionist, a friendly corporal named Jenkins who had been at the base longer than most could remember. "Morning, Sergeant Gonzalez," Jenkins said with a smile. "Dr. Peterson is running a few minutes behind, but he should be ready for you shortly." Maria nodded and took a seat in the waiting area. She glanced around at the familiar posters promoting health and wellness, safety protocols, and upcoming base events. The normalcy of it all was comforting, yet that nagging feeling in her stomach persisted. She pulled out her phone to check messages when her name was called. Dr. Peterson was a man in his 50s with graying hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He had been the base's primary physician for over a decade and had seen Maria through various minor injuries and routine examinations. Their relationship was professional but friendly, built on mutual respect and trust. "Good morning, Maria," he said as she entered the examination room. "How are you feeling today?" "Fine, sir. Ready to get this over with," she replied with a slight smile. The examination proceeded normally at first. Dr. Peterson checked her vital signs, reviewed her medical history, and asked about any concerns or changes in her health. It was when he asked her to roll up her sleeves for a blood draw that everything changed. Maria had always been careful about her sleeves, keeping them rolled down even in the heat of summer. It wasn't unusual for soldiers to have tattoos, but hers was different. As she pushed up the fabric of her left sleeve, a small but intricate design became visible on her forearm. Dr. Peterson's routine preparation for the blood draw suddenly stopped. The tattoo was no larger than a silver dollar, but its design was unmistakable to anyone who knew what to look for. It featured a stylized phoenix rising from flames, but within the flames were subtle symbols that most would dismiss as artistic flourishes. Dr. Peterson's face went pale as he recognized the markings. "Maria," he said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper, "where did you get that tattoo?" The question caught her off guard. In 3 years of medical examinations, no one had ever asked about her tattoos before. Most soldiers had them, and they were rarely a topic of medical discussion unless they showed signs of infection or allergic reaction. "I got it when I was younger," she replied cautiously. "Why do you ask?" Dr. Peterson set down his medical instruments and moved closer to examine the tattoo more carefully. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his glasses, and Maria could see the color draining from his face. The symbols within the phoenix design were not random artistic elements as they appeared to the casual observer. They were a code, a marking system that had been used by a clandestine organization that was supposed to have been disbanded years ago. "Maria, I need you to tell me exactly when and where you got this tattoo. This is very important, Dr. Peterson said, his professional demeanor barely masking what appeared to be fear. The urgency in his voice alarmed her. Dr. Peterson, is something wrong? It's just a tattoo. I got it about 8 years ago when I was stationed overseas. There was this artist in a small town near the base who specialized in military-themed designs. What was the name of the town? Do you remember the artist's name? His questions came rapidly, each one more intense than the last. Maria searched her memory. Those days seemed like a lifetime ago, back when she was just a young private trying to find her place in the military. It was a small place outside of Kandahar. I think the artist's name was Abbas, or something like that. He had a small shop near the market. Dr. Peterson, you're scaring me. What's wrong with my tattoo? Dr. Peterson stepped back and ran his hands through his hair. He had been hoping he was wrong, that his eyes were playing tricks on him. But the more he examined the markings, the more certain he became. The symbols hidden within the Phoenix design were part of a communication system used by an intelligence network that had operated in Afghanistan during Maria's early years of service. The network had been known as Operation Nightingale, and it had been involved in activities that went far beyond normal military operations. Members of the network had used various methods to identify each other, including specific tattoo designs that appeared innocent to outsiders, but carried coded information for those who knew how to read them. Maria, I need to make a phone call. Can you wait here for a moment? Dr. Peterson asked, though it sounded more like an order than a request. Am I in trouble? I don't understand what's happening, Maria said, her voice showing the first signs of panic. Just wait here. Please don't leave the room, he said as he stepped into the hallway, leaving Maria alone with her racing thoughts. Outside the examination room, Dr. Peterson pulled out his secure phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. The voice that answered was gruff and immediately recognizable. Colonel Harrison speaking. Colonel, it's Dr. Peterson at Fort Davidson. We have a situation. I'm looking at a tattoo that I believe is connected to Operation Nightingale. There was silence on the other end of the line for several seconds before Colonel Harrison spoke again. Are you certain? As certain as I can be without running it through the database. The markings are exactly as I remember them from the briefings. We need to handle this carefully. Who is the soldier? Staff Sergeant Maria Gonzalez. She's been at this base for 3 years. Exemplary service record, logistics division. I've been her physician the entire time, and I've never seen this tattoo before. Keep her in that room. I'm sending someone over immediately. Do not discuss this with anyone else, and do not let her leave. This is now classified under the highest security protocols. Dr. Peterson ended the call and returned to the examination room where Maria sat waiting, her face a mixture of confusion and growing fear. He tried to maintain his composure, but the gravity of the situation was becoming clear to both of them. Maria, I need you to remain calm. Someone is coming to speak with you about your tattoo. It appears there may be some significance to the design that we need to understand better. Significance? Dr. Peterson, I just got a tattoo from some guy in Afghanistan years ago. I was young and thought it looked cool. I don't understand why this is such a big deal. The next 20 minutes felt like hours. Maria sat in the examination room while Dr. Peterson pretended to complete routine paperwork, both of them acutely aware that something far more serious was unfolding than either had anticipated when the day began. When the knock came at the door, Dr. Peterson opened it to reveal 2 men in military dress uniforms. The first was Colonel Harrison, a tall man with silver hair and intense blue eyes. The second was Captain Williams, a younger officer with a serious expression and a briefcase in his hand. Staff Sergeant Gonzalez, Colonel Harrison said as he entered the room. I'm Colonel Harrison from Base Intelligence. We need to discuss your tattoo. Maria stood and saluted automatically, her military training taking over despite her confusion. Yes, sir. Though I still don't understand why my tattoo is of interest to intelligence. Captain Williams opened his briefcase and removed a tablet computer. He showed the screen to Maria, displaying detailed images of various tattoo designs. Sergeant, do you recognize any of these designs? Maria studied the images carefully. While they were all different in their artistic execution, she could see similarities in the symbolic elements hidden within each design. Her own tattoo bore resemblance to several of them, particularly in the way certain lines and shapes were incorporated into the overall design. They look similar to mine in some ways, she admitted. But I don't understand what that means. Colonel Harrison exchanged a look with Captain Williams before continuing. These tattoos were used as identification markers by members of a covert intelligence network that operated in Afghanistan between 2010 and 2015. The network was called Operation Nightingale, and it was involved in activities that are still classified today. The color drained from Maria's face as the implications began to sink in. Sir, are you suggesting that I was involved in some kind of covert operation? Because I can assure you that I was just a private in the logistics division. I moved supplies and maintained equipment. I was never involved in any intelligence activities. We're not accusing you of anything, Sergeant, Captain Williams said. But the fact that you have this tattoo suggests that someone wanted you to be identifiable as connected to the network, whether you were aware of it or not. Dr. Peterson, who had been quietly observing the exchange, finally spoke up. Could someone have given her this tattoo without her knowledge of its significance? It's possible, Colonel Harrison replied. The network used various methods to mark individuals who might be useful to them in the future. Sometimes people were marked without their conscious participation in the network's activities. Maria felt as if the room was spinning. Everything she thought she knew about her past was being called into question. But why would anyone want to mark me? I was nobody special, just a young soldier trying to do her job. Captain Williams consulted his tablet again before responding. Your assignment records show that you had access to supply chain information and transportation schedules. That kind of information could be very valuable to an intelligence network operating in the region. Are you saying someone was using me to gather intelligence without my knowledge? It's one possibility we have to consider, Colonel Harrison said. Another possibility is that you were recruited into the network and your memory of those events has been suppressed or altered. The suggestion that her memories might not be reliable sent a chill down Maria's spine. She had always prided herself on her attention to detail and her reliable memory, traits that had served her well in the logistics field. The idea that there might be gaps or alterations in her recollection of events was deeply disturbing. What happens now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Now we need to investigate, Colonel Harrison replied. We'll need to review your service records, interview people you served with during that time period, and possibly conduct some specialized interviews to help you remember details that you might not be consciously aware of. Specialized interviews? Maria asked, though she suspected she didn't want to know the answer. Sometimes when people have been involved in covert activities, their memories are deliberately obscured to protect the operation and the individuals involved. There are techniques that can help recover those memories safely. The room fell silent as the weight of the situation settled over everyone present. What had started as a routine medical examination had revealed a mystery that went to the heart of military intelligence operations. Maria's simple logistics patch represented the life she thought she knew, but the tattoo on her arm suggested a completely different story that she might not even remember living. As the initial shock began to wear off, Maria found herself thinking about her time in Afghanistan with new eyes. Had there been signs that she had missed? Were there people she had met or conversations she had participated in that carried more significance than she had realized at the time? The questions multiplied in her mind, each one opening up new possibilities that she wasn't sure she was ready to explore. The investigation that was about to begin would force her to confront the possibility that her entire understanding of her own past was incomplete. More importantly, it would determine whether the secret hidden in her tattoo posed a threat to the security of the base and the soldiers who had come to trust her implicitly over the past 3 years. The secure conference room in the intelligence building felt like a different world from the familiar medical facility where Maria's day had started. Gone were the comfortable routine and predictable environment she had known for 3 years. Instead, she found herself surrounded by classified documents, computer screens displaying encrypted data, and officers whose expressions revealed nothing about their thoughts or intentions. Colonel Harrison had assembled a team of specialists to investigate what they were now calling the Nightingale Incident. Captain Williams served as the primary investigator, while Dr. Sarah Chun, a military psychologist specializing in memory recovery, had been brought in to help Maria explore any suppressed or altered memories. Agent Thompson from the Defense Intelligence Agency completed the team, his presence indicating the serious nature of the security implications. Maria sat at the polished conference table feeling like a specimen under a microscope. Her service record lay open before the investigators, every assignment, every performance review, every commendation scrutinized for clues about her possible involvement with Operation Nightingale. The woman who had walked into the medical facility that morning as a respected staff sergeant now felt like a suspect in her own life. Let's start with your deployment to Afghanistan, Captain Williams said, consulting his notes. You arrived at Forward Operating Base Chapman in March 2016. Your assignment was to manage supply logistics for the base and coordinate shipments between Chapman and smaller outposts in the region. That's correct, Maria replied, her voice steady despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. It was my first overseas deployment. I was excited to finally be doing real military work instead of training exercises. Dr. Chen leaned forward, her manner professional but kind. Maria, I want you to close your eyes and think back to that time. Don't worry about being perfect in your recollections. Just tell us what you remember about your first week at the base. Maria closed her eyes and tried to transport herself back to those early days in Afghanistan. I remember being overwhelmed by the heat and the dust. Everything was so different from base life in the States. The compound was much smaller than I had expected, and everyone seemed to know each other already. I felt like the outsider trying to find her place. Do you remember who showed you around? Who helped you get oriented? Dr. Chen prompted. There was a sergeant, Sergeant Rodriguez, who was leaving just as I arrived. He spent a couple of days showing me the systems and procedures before he rotated out. And there was a civilian contractor, a logistics coordinator, who worked with us on supply management. Agent Thompson looked up sharply from his notes. Can you describe this civilian contractor? Maria opened her eyes, sensing the increased tension in the room. He was an older man, maybe in his 50s. Gray hair, always wore khaki pants and polo shirts. He seemed to know a lot about the local supply networks and had contacts with vendors in the nearby towns. Do you remember his name? Captain Williams asked. Mr. Patterson, I think. Or maybe Peterson. He insisted everyone call him by his first name, but I always used Mr. as a sign of respect. His first name was... She paused, searching her memory. David, maybe? Or Daniel? It's strange, I worked with him almost daily for months, but I'm having trouble remembering details about him. Dr. Chun and Agent Thompson exchanged glances. That's actually not uncommon when memories have been tampered with, Dr. Chun explained gently. The mind sometimes compensates for missing or altered information by making details fuzzy or hard to recall. The possibility that her memories had been deliberately altered was still difficult for Maria to accept. But why would anyone want to mess with my memories? I was just a young soldier doing supply work. Agent Thompson consulted a thick file before responding. Operation Nightingale wasn't just an intelligence network. It was a sophisticated operation that used legitimate military logistics to move people, information, and materials that weren't officially documented. Someone in your position would have been extremely valuable to them. Are you saying I was unknowingly helping to smuggle things? It's possible, Captain Williams said. Your access to shipping manifests, transportation schedules, and supply chain information could have been used to hide unauthorized activities within normal military operations. Dr. Chen pulled out a tablet and showed Maria a series of photographs. Do any of these faces look familiar to you? Maria studied the images carefully. Most were of men in civilian clothing, though a few appeared to be in military uniforms. One face caught her attention, a man with dark hair and intense eyes who seemed somehow familiar, though she couldn't place where she might have seen him. This one, she said, pointing to the photograph. I think I might have seen him before, but I can't remember where or when. His name is Marcus Khalil, Agent Thompson said. He was a known operative for Operation Nightingale. If you encountered him during your deployment, it would suggest direct contact with the network. The revelation sent a chill through Maria. The idea that she had been in contact with covert operatives without knowing it made her question every interaction she had experienced during those months in Afghanistan. How many other encounters had been more significant than they appeared at the time? Captain Williams opened another file and spread out a series of documents on the table. We've been reviewing the supply records from your time at Chapman. There are several anomalies that we need to discuss with you. The documents showed shipping manifests, inventory reports, and transportation schedules from her time at the base. At first glance, everything appeared normal, but as Captain Williams pointed out certain entries, patterns began to emerge that Maria didn't remember authorizing or processing. Here, he said, indicating a series of shipments in June 2016. These show supplies being redirected to a location that's not on any of our official base listings. Do you remember processing these shipments? Maria studied the documents carefully. The paperwork bore her electronic signature and appeared to be in her handwriting, but she had no memory of processing these particular shipments. I don't remember these at all. The signature looks like mine, but I would remember sending supplies to an unauthorized location. This is exactly what we were afraid of, Dr. Chen said softly. It appears that your involvement with the operation was more extensive than you consciously remember. Agent Thompson leaned back in his chair, his expression grim. The location these supplies were sent to was a safe house used by Operation Nightingale. According to our intelligence, it was a key facility in their network, used for debriefing assets and planning operations. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Maria wasn't just someone who had been marked by the network. She had been an active participant in their operations, even if she didn't remember it. The tattoo on her arm wasn't just an identifier. It was a badge of membership in an organization she didn't remember joining. How is this possible? Maria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. How could I have done all of this and not remember any of it? Dr. Chen reached across the table and placed a reassuring hand on Maria's arm. Memory alteration was one of the techniques used by covert operations during that time period. Participants could be given specific instructions or training, then have their memories of those activities suppressed or altered to protect the operation. But why would I agree to have my memories altered? Why would I participate in something like this? That's what we need to find out, Captain Williams said. It's possible you were coerced, or that you were led to believe you were participating in a legitimate military operation. Some people volunteered for memory alteration because they believed it would protect them and their families if they were ever captured or interrogated. Agent Thompson opened his laptop and showed Maria a timeline he had been constructing. Based on the documents we've found, your active participation in Operation Nightingale appears to have lasted about 4 months, from June to September 2016. During that time, you processed dozens of unauthorized shipments and had contact with multiple network operatives. What happened in September? Why did it stop? That's when you got your tattoo, Dr. Chen said. According to our research, the tattoo was given to active network members when their operational phase ended. It served as both a recognition of their service and a way to identify them in the future if they needed to be reactivated. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together, but the picture they formed was more disturbing than Maria could have imagined. She had not only been involved in covert operations, she had been marked for possible future use by the network. The tattoo on her arm was like a sleeper cell identifier, waiting to be activated by someone who knew how to read its hidden symbols. Are there others? Maria asked. Other soldiers who were marked like this? We believe so, Agent Thompson replied. Your case is the first time we've identified someone with these markings, but the network was extensive. There could be dozens or even hundreds of people walking around with similar tattoos, unaware of their significance. Captain Williams stood and walked to the window overlooking the base. This changes everything we thought we knew about Operation Nightingale. If they were marking assets for future use, the network might not be as defunct as we believed. The possibility that the network was still active somewhere sent a new wave of anxiety through Maria. Am I in danger? Are the people on this base in danger because of me? We don't know yet, Colonel Harrison said, speaking for the first time in over an hour. That's why this investigation is so critical. We need to understand not just what you did in the past, but whether your presence here represents an ongoing security risk. Dr. Chen pulled out another device, something that looked like a combination of a tablet and medical equipment. Maria, I'd like to try some memory recovery techniques with you. It's possible that we can help you remember more details about your involvement with the network. Is it safe? Will it hurt? The process is safe, but it can be emotionally difficult. You might remember things that are disturbing or confusing. However, those memories could be crucial to understanding the current security situation. Maria looked around the room at the faces of the people who were asking her to trust them with her mind and her memories. 3 hours ago, she had been a respected staff sergeant with a clear understanding of her own history. Now she was being told that significant portions of her past had been deliberately hidden from her, and that recovering those memories might be the key to protecting the base and her fellow soldiers. The decision wasn't really a choice at all. If there was any possibility that her presence at the base posed a risk to others, she had to do whatever was necessary to uncover the truth, regardless of what that truth might reveal about her own past. Let's do it, she said quietly. Let's find out what I've forgotten. As Dr. Chen began preparing the memory recovery equipment, Maria found herself staring at the tattoo on her arm with new understanding. The simple design that she had carried for years without thinking about it was about to unlock memories that someone had gone to great lengths to hide from her. Whatever she discovered in those recovered memories would determine not only her own future, but potentially the safety of everyone at Fort Davidson. The investigation was about to enter a new and unpredictable phase, one that would test the limits of memory, identity, and trust in ways that none of them could fully anticipate. The memory recovery session took place in a specialized facility deep within the intelligence building, far from the routine bustle of base life. Maria lay on a reclining chair that resembled something between a dentist's chair and medical equipment, electrodes attached to her temples, and a monitoring device tracking her vital signs. Dr. Chen sat beside her with a tablet, ready to guide her through the process of recovering memories that had been buried for years. The process works by using specific frequencies to stimulate the areas of your brain where suppressed memories are stored, Dr. Chen explained in a soothing voice. You may experience the memories as if they're happening in real time, or they might come back as fragments and images. Don't try to force anything. Just let your mind wander back to that time in Afghanistan. Colonel Harrison, Captain Williams, and Agent Thompson observed from behind a one-way window, watching monitors that displayed Maria's brain activity and vital signs. They had seen this procedure before, but never under circumstances where the recovered memories could have such far-reaching implications for national security. As the equipment began to hum softly, Maria felt a strange tingling sensation in her head. The room around her seemed to fade away, replaced by the harsh sunlight and dusty air of forward operating base Chapman. She was back in Afghanistan, but this time she was experiencing it with adult awareness and understanding that she hadn't possessed as a young private. The first memory that surfaced was of her third week at the base. She was working late in the supply depot when David Patterson, the civilian contractor, approached her with a clipboard and a concerned expression. "Maria, we have a problem with one of the supply routes," he said in the memory. "There's been an attack on the convoy route to Outpost Delta, and we need to reroute some critical supplies through an alternate location." In the present, Maria's heart rate increased as she watched the memory unfold. She could hear Dr. Chen's voice asking her to describe what she was seeing, and she found herself narrating the scene as it played out in her mind. "He's showing me paperwork for a supply shipment that needs to be redirected. The destination is listed as a grid coordinate rather than a base name. I remember thinking that was unusual, but he explained that it was a temporary forward position that hadn't been given an official designation yet." In the memory, young Maria accepted the explanation without question. She had been trained to follow orders and trust the judgment of more experienced personnel. Patterson guided her through the process of updating the shipping manifests and arranging for the transport vehicles. What she didn't realize at the time was that she was being slowly indoctrinated into a system of unquestioned compliance with special requests. "There's another person there now," Maria continued, her voice taking on the distant quality that indicated deep memory recall. "A man in civilian clothes, but he carries himself like military. He's watching me process the paperwork, and Patterson introduces him as someone from Regional Logistics Coordination." Agent Thompson leaned forward in the observation room. "Can you describe this man in detail?" "Tall, dark hair, maybe early 40s. He has a scar above his left eyebrow, and he speaks with a slight accent I can't place. He's very interested in how I handle the computer systems and asks detailed questions about security protocols." The man Maria was describing matched the profile of Marcus Khalil, the known Operation Nightingale operative whose photograph she had partially recognized earlier. His presence during her early training sessions suggested that the network had been evaluating her from almost the moment she arrived at the base. As the memory recovery session continued, more scenes emerged from Maria's suppressed past. She recalled being taken to a secure facility off-base for what was described as advanced logistics training. The facility was presented as a special program for promising young soldiers, and Maria felt honored to be selected for the additional education. "The training facility is unlike anything I've seen before," Maria described, her voice filled with the wonder she had felt as a young soldier. "It's much more sophisticated than our base facilities. There are computer systems I've never worked with before, and the instructors seem to know everything about supply chain management, transportation security, and even basic intelligence operations." During this training, Maria learned about compartmentalized operations, where different parts of a mission were kept separate so that no single person knew the complete picture. She was taught to process paperwork without asking questions about the final destination or purpose of shipments, a skill that would later make her invaluable to Operation Nightingale. Dr. Chen guided Maria deeper into the memories, focusing on the period when her involvement with the network became more direct. The scenes that emerged painted a picture of gradual recruitment and increasing responsibility within a shadow organization that operated parallel to official military channels. I'm in a meeting room with Patterson, Marcus, and two other people I don't recognize, Maria continued. They're explaining that I've been selected for a special assignment that will help protect American assets in the region. They say that traditional military logistics isn't flexible enough to respond to rapidly changing threat situations, and that they need people like me who can work outside normal channels when necessary. The appeal to patriotism and the suggestion that she was being trusted with important responsibilities had been irresistible to young Maria. She agreed to take on additional duties that would involve processing shipments and coordinating transportation for what was described as a rapid response intelligence unit. They gave me new access codes and showed me how to create shipping manifests that wouldn't appear in normal military databases, Maria recalled. They said it was necessary to keep sensitive operations hidden from potential security breaches. Everything they told me seemed reasonable at the time. Over the following weeks, Maria's involvement deepened. She processed dozens of shipments to locations that weren't on official base lists, coordinated transportation for personnel who didn't appear on normal military rosters, and maintained communication with a network of contacts throughout the region. All of this activity was hidden within her normal logistics duties, making it nearly impossible for her supervisors to detect. I'm meeting regularly with Marcus now, Maria continued, her voice showing signs of emotional distress as the memories became more complex. He's teaching me about information security and showing me how to recognize intelligence-gathering opportunities. He says that logistics personnel see everything and that I'm in a unique position to help protect American interests. Agent Thompson was taking extensive notes as Maria's account revealed the sophisticated nature of Operation Nightingale's recruitment and operational procedures. The network had systematically identified personnel with access to critical resources and gradually brought them into the organization through appeals to patriotism and duty. The most disturbing memories came from the final phase of Maria's involvement. As her operational period neared its end, she was told that she would need to undergo a security transition to protect both herself and the network from potential exposure. They're explaining that my memories of the special operations will need to be suppressed for everyone's safety, Maria said, her voice now showing clear distress. They say that if I'm ever captured or interrogated, I won't be able to reveal information that could compromise ongoing operations or endanger other network members. The memory of agreeing to the procedure was particularly painful. Young Maria had been convinced that having her memories suppressed was an act of patriotic duty, a necessary sacrifice to protect national security. She remembered feeling proud to be trusted with such an important responsibility, never suspecting that she was being manipulated by an organization with its own agenda. The procedure itself is taking place in a medical facility I don't recognize, Maria continued. There are doctors there, but they're not military personnel. Marcus is present, along with Patterson and someone who identifies himself as a senior network coordinator. Dr. Chin monitored Maria's vital signs carefully as she relived the memory suppression procedure. The experience was clearly traumatic, even viewed from the perspective of recovered memory. Maria's heart rate increased significantly as she described the injection she received and the gradual fading of her consciousness. They're telling me that when I wake up, I'll remember the cover story they've prepared, Maria said, her voice becoming faint. I'll remember getting the tattoo as a personal choice, just a young soldier wanting to commemorate her deployment. I won't remember any of the special operations or the people I've worked with. When Maria emerged from the memory recovery session, she was emotionally exhausted but also filled with a clear understanding of what had happened to her. The experience of reliving her suppressed memories had been intense and disturbing, but it had also provided the investigation team with detailed information about Operation Nightingale's methods and objectives. Colonel Harrison entered the recovery room as Dr. Chun was helping Maria sit up and regain her bearings. "How are you feeling?" he asked with genuine concern. "Like I've been living someone else's life for the past 8 years, Maria replied. "Everything I thought I knew about my time in Afghanistan was wrong. I wasn't just a young soldier doing logistics work. I was part of something much bigger and more complex than I ever imagined." Agent Thompson reviewed his extensive notes from the session. "The level of detail you've provided gives us the most comprehensive picture we've ever had of how Operation Nightingale operated. Your memories confirm our suspicions about their recruitment methods and reveal new information about their operational scope." "What happens now?" Maria asked. "Now that I remember everything, what does that mean for my security clearance, my position here, my future in the military?" Captain Williams consulted with Colonel Harrison before responding. That depends on what else we discovered during the investigation. Your cooperation and the information you've provided demonstrate your commitment to national security, but we still need to understand whether the network has any ongoing plans for you or other marked individuals. Dr. Chen packed away the memory recovery equipment, but her expression remained troubled. Maria, now that your memories have been restored, you may find that other suppressed memories surface spontaneously. If that happens, it's important that you contact us immediately. The possibility of additional hidden memories was both intriguing and frightening. Maria realized that her recovered memories might be only part of a larger story, and that there could be other experiences buried in her subconscious that were equally significant. As the team prepared to conclude the session, Agent Thompson raised a concern that had been weighing on everyone's minds. We need to consider the possibility that Operation Nightingale built activation protocols into their memory suppression procedures. If Maria's tattoo can be read by network operatives, her recovered memories might make her a target. The implications of this possibility sent a chill through the room. If the network was still active and learned that Maria had recovered her memories, she could become a liability that needed to be eliminated. Her knowledge of their operations and methods would make her extremely dangerous to them if it became public. Colonel Harrison made the decision that would shape the next phase of the investigation. From this point forward, Staff Sergeant Gonzalez is under protective custody. We can't risk the possibility that the network might attempt to contact or neutralize her. The investigation continues, but her safety is now our primary concern. As Maria was escorted to secure quarters, she found herself reflecting on the strange turn her life had taken. In less than 24 hours, she had gone from being a respected staff sergeant with a routine existence to being a key witness in a national security investigation. The tattoo on her arm, which had seemed like a harmless reminder of her youth, had revealed a hidden past that threatened everything she thought she knew about herself and her service to her country. The memories she had recovered were just the beginning of a journey that would force her to confront not only her own hidden history, but also the continuing threat posed by an intelligence network that might still be operating in the shadows. The secure quarters where Maria spent the night felt more like a prison cell than protective custody. Despite the comfortable furnishings and the assurance that she was being kept safe, the reality of her situation was inescapable. She was now a key witness in a national security investigation, and her recovered memories had made her a potential target for elimination by the very network she had unknowingly served years earlier. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by fragments of additional memories that seemed to surface at random intervals. Dr. Chun had warned her that this might happen, but experiencing it was more disturbing than she had anticipated. Images and conversations from her time with Operation Nightingale flickered through her consciousness like scenes from a half-remembered movie, each one adding another piece to the puzzle of her hidden past. At dawn, Maria was awakened by Agent Thompson's urgent knocking on her door. His expression was grim as he entered the room, followed by Captain Williams and 2 military police officers she didn't recognize. "We have a problem," Thompson said without preamble. "Last night, someone attempted to access your personnel files from an external location. They were blocked by our security systems, but the attempt suggests that word of your memory recovery may have reached the wrong people." Maria's blood ran cold. The possibility that Operation Nightingale was still active and monitoring for signs of their former assets had been discussed, but she had hoped it was just theoretical. The reality that they might be actively seeking information about her was terrifying. "What does this mean for my safety?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Captain Williams stepped forward. "It means we're moving you to a more secure location while we investigate further. We've also identified other individuals at bases across the country who have similar tattoos. If this network is reactivating, you might not be their only target." The revelation that there were others like her was both comforting and alarming. Maria realized she wasn't alone in this situation, but it also meant the scope of the potential threat was much larger than anyone had initially understood. As they prepared to transport Maria to the new secure facility, Dr. Chen arrived with disturbing news of her own. "I've been analyzing the memory recovery session data, and I found something troubling. The memory suppression technique used on Maria was more sophisticated than standard military procedures. It appears to have included embedded triggers that could be used to reactivate suppressed programming." Agent Thompson's jaw tightened. "Are you saying she could be remotely controlled?" "Not exactly controlled, but potentially influenced. If someone who knows the correct trigger phrases or symbols makes contact with her, It could activate dormant instructions that were implanted during her original programming. She might find herself compelled to perform certain actions without understanding why. The implications of this discovery sent shockwaves through the investigation team. Maria wasn't just a witness to be protected. She was potentially a sleeper agent who could be activated by her former handlers if they managed to make contact with her. Is there a way to remove these triggers? Maria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Chen's expression was apologetic. The technology used was experimental at the time, and we don't fully understand how to safely reverse it. Attempting to remove the triggers could cause permanent memory loss or psychological damage. As the team grappled with this new information, Colonel Harrison received an urgent communication that changed the entire dynamic of the investigation. We've just intercepted communications indicating that Operation Nightingale assets are being activated at multiple military installations. This isn't just about Maria anymore. We're looking at a coordinated effort to compromise military security across the country. Agent Thompson immediately began coordinating with other intelligence agencies, while Captain Williams worked to identify all personnel at Fort Davidson who might be potential sleeper agents. The base that had seemed so secure just days earlier was now under internal threat from people who might not even be aware of their own potential for betrayal. Maria found herself at the center of a rapidly expanding crisis that threatened national security on multiple levels. Her case had been the key that unlocked a much larger conspiracy, one that had been dormant for years but was now springing into action for reasons that remained unclear. The secure transport to the new facility was carried out with military precision, but even during the short journey, evidence of the network's capabilities became apparent. As their convoy passed through a routine checkpoint, the military police officer conducting the inspection made brief eye contact with Maria and spoke a seemingly innocuous phrase about the weather. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Maria felt a strange compulsion wash over her, an almost irresistible urge to respond to the officer with a specific phrase that she didn't remember learning. Only Dr. Chen's quick intervention prevented her from speaking the words that would have identified her as an active network asset. The trigger phrase, Dr. Chen said urgently to the security detail. Someone is trying to activate her programming. We need to get her away from here immediately. The convoy accelerated away from the checkpoint as Agent Thompson radioed for an investigation of the officer who had attempted to trigger Maria's programming. The incident demonstrated that Operation Nightingale had infiltrated military security at multiple levels and could potentially activate their assets anywhere in the military structure. At the new secure facility, a former military research installation that had been converted for high-security investigations, Maria underwent intensive evaluation to determine the extent of her programmed responses and identify potential countermeasures. Dr. Chen worked with a team of specialists to map the neural pathways that had been modified during her original memory suppression. The good news is that your awareness of the programming seems to provide some protection against it, Dr. Chen explained during one of the evaluation sessions. Knowing that you might be triggered allows your conscious mind to resist the compulsions. The bad news is that the programming is deeply embedded and could potentially overwhelm your resistance under the right circumstances. Meanwhile, Agent Thompson and his expanded investigation team were uncovering the scope of Operation Nightingale's infiltration of military installations across the country. The network had been more extensive than anyone had imagined, with assets embedded at virtually every major base and many smaller facilities. We've identified over 200 personnel with tattoos matching the Operation Nightingale pattern, Thompson reported during a secure video conference with Pentagon officials. Most of them are unaware of their programming, but several have shown signs of activation in response to trigger phrases or symbols. The revelation that Operation Nightingale had created an army of unwitting sleeper agents within the military prompted an immediate national security alert. Bases across the country implemented enhanced security protocols while investigators worked to identify and neutralize the programmed assets. For Maria, the knowledge that she was part of such an extensive network was both validating and horrifying. Her individual case had revealed a threat to national security that could potentially compromise military operations worldwide. The simple tattoo on her arm had become the thread that unraveled one of the most sophisticated intelligence operations in military history. As the investigation progressed, patterns began to emerge in the network's recent activities. The activation of sleeper agents appeared to be coordinated with specific geopolitical events, suggesting that Operation Nightingale was being directed by foreign intelligence services rather than domestic interests. The timing of the activations corresponds with tensions in Eastern Europe and the Pacific, Agent Thompson explained to the investigation team. Someone is using these assets to gather intelligence about American military capabilities and readiness. Dr. Chen's analysis of Maria's programming revealed additional, disturbing information about the network's sophistication. The neural modifications weren't just about memory suppression and behavioral programming. They also included mechanisms for encrypted communication that could allow handlers to pass messages through the programmed individuals without their awareness. This discovery meant that Maria and others like her could potentially be used as unwitting communication channels, passing coded messages through normal military communications networks without realizing they were doing so. The implications for military security were staggering. As the fourth day of the investigation concluded, Maria found herself facing a choice that would determine not only her own future, but potentially the security of the nation. Dr. Chun had developed an experimental procedure that might be able to neutralize her programming, but the risks were significant. The procedure could remove the embedded triggers and communication protocols, Dr. Chen explained. But there's a substantial risk of memory loss, personality changes, or even permanent psychological damage. Without the procedure, you'll remain vulnerable to activation, but you'll retain your full cognitive abilities. Agent Thompson added his own perspective to the decision. If you choose to undergo the procedure, you'll be helping us develop countermeasures that could protect the other programmed assets. Your case could be the key to neutralizing this entire network. Colonel Harrison, who had become increasingly involved as the scope of the threat became clear, offered his own assessment. Whatever you decide, Sergeant Gonzalez, know that your service to your country has been exemplary. You've shown remarkable courage in facing this situation, and no one will question your loyalty or dedication. As Maria considered her options, she realized that her choice would impact not only her own life, but the lives of hundreds of other military personnel who had been unknowingly programmed by Operation Nightingale. The weight of that responsibility was enormous, but she also understood that she was uniquely positioned to help neutralize a threat that could compromise American military security for years to come. The simple tattoo that had seemed so innocent just a few days earlier had revealed a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of military and intelligence operations. Now Maria had to decide whether she was willing to risk everything to help bring that conspiracy to an end, knowing that the decision could cost her not only her memories, but potentially her life. The network that had used her once was now trying to use her again, but this time she had the awareness and support to fight back. The question was whether she would choose to take the risk necessary to protect others from the fate that had been imposed on her without her knowledge or consent. The decision weighed on Maria through another sleepless night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of fellow soldiers who might be carrying the same burden of hidden programming, unaware that they could be activated at any moment to betray everything they had sworn to protect. The choice between personal safety and the greater good had never been starker. By morning, her resolve had crystallized. When Dr. Chen arrived for their scheduled consultation, Maria's first words made her position clear. "I want to do the procedure," she said without preamble. "If there's any chance it can help protect other people from what happened to me, I have to try." Dr. Chen's expression mixed admiration with concern. "Maria, I need you to understand the full risks. The experimental procedure could result in complete memory loss, personality fragmentation, or even catatonia. We're essentially trying to perform neurosurgery on memories that were hidden using technology we don't fully understand." "I understand," Maria replied. "But I also understand that there are hundreds of people out there who don't even know they're carrying this programming. They can't make the choice I'm making because they don't know the choice exists. Someone has to take the risk to help them." Agent Thompson arrived as they were discussing the technical details of the procedure. His expression was urgent, and he carried a tablet displaying what appeared to be intelligence reports from multiple sources. "We have a situation," he announced. 3 more bases reported activation attempts overnight. One was successful. A logistics coordinator at Fort Bragg processed unauthorized shipments totaling over $2 million in military equipment to unknown destinations before his programming was detected and interrupted. The news strengthened Maria's resolve. "How soon can we do the procedure?" Dr. Chun consulted her notes. "The equipment will be ready this afternoon. But, Maria, once we begin, there's no turning back. If something goes wrong, we may not be able to restore your original personality or memories." "If something goes wrong with the current situation, a lot of people could die," Maria replied. "At least this way, my risk might help protect others." Colonel Harrison joined the group as preparations for the procedure began. Sergeant Gonzalez, I want you to know that your decision has been reported at the highest levels of command. Whatever happens today, you'll be remembered as someone who put service above self in the most difficult circumstances imaginable. The procedure was scheduled for late afternoon, giving Dr. Chun and her team time to prepare the experimental equipment and protocols. Maria spent the morning in sessions with military psychologists who helped her document her current memories and personality traits, creating a baseline that could potentially be used to assess the procedure's effects. As the time for the procedure approached, Agent Thompson received intelligence that added urgency to their work. We've intercepted communications suggesting that Operation Nightingale is planning a major activation event. They appear to be preparing to use their embedded assets for a coordinated intelligence-gathering operation that could compromise multiple ongoing military missions. How long do we have? Dr. Chen asked. Best estimate is 72 hours before they begin the activation sequence. If we can develop countermeasures based on what we learned from Maria's procedure, we might be able to protect the other programmed personnel. The medical facility where the procedure would take place had been equipped with the most advanced neurological monitoring equipment available to the military. Dr. Chun worked alongside specialists from the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency and the National Institutes of Health, combining expertise from multiple fields to tackle a problem none of them had encountered before. As Maria was prepared for the procedure, she found herself thinking about the young private she had been in Afghanistan, so eager to serve her country and so trusting of the people who claimed to have her best interests at heart. That young woman could never have imagined that her willingness to serve would be exploited by people who cared nothing for her welfare or the principles she had sworn to uphold. Maria, Dr. Chun said as the final preparations were completed, I want you to focus on your strongest, most positive memories during the procedure. Your sense of self and your commitment to your values will be your anchor points. No matter what else happens, hold on to those. The procedure began with Maria in a state of monitored consciousness, able to communicate with the medical team while they worked to map and neutralize the embedded programming. The first phase involved identifying the specific neural pathways that had been modified during her original memory suppression. I can see the modification patterns, Dr. Chun reported to the monitoring team. They're incredibly sophisticated, integrated into natural memory formation processes in ways that make them nearly impossible to detect without specialized equipment. As the team worked to isolate the programmed elements, Maria experienced a strange sensation of her memories reorganizing themselves. Years of experiences that had seemed disconnected suddenly began to make sense as the artificial barriers in her mind were gradually removed. There's something else here, Dr. Chen said, her voice filled with surprise. The programming includes what appears to be a complete intelligence database. Maria isn't just carrying behavioral modifications. She's carrying encrypted information about Operation Nightingale's entire network. Agent Thompson leaned forward intently. Can you extract that information without damaging her memory structures? I think so, but it's going to take longer than we anticipated. The data is integrated with her personal memories in ways that suggest she was intended to be a living archive of the network's operations. As the procedure continued, the scope of what had been done to Maria became increasingly clear. She had been more than just a recruited asset or programmed sleeper agent. She had been converted into a human storage device for Operation Nightingale's most sensitive information, a walking database that could be accessed by anyone who knew the proper codes. This explains why they marked her with the tattoo, Captain Williams observed. She wasn't just an asset to be activated. She was a repository of critical information that they needed to be able to identify and access in the future. The extraction of the embedded database took several hours, during which Maria remained conscious but in an altered state that allowed her to observe the process while remaining mentally stable. She watched as years of suppressed information surfaced in her consciousness, revealing the true scope of Operation Nightingale's activities. I can see it all now, she said in a voice that sounded distant and dreamy. Names, locations, operational procedures, financial accounts, communication protocols. They turned me into a living backup drive for their entire organization. Dr. Chun worked carefully to extract the information while preserving Maria's original personality and memories. The process was delicate and dangerous, requiring precise manipulation of neural pathways that could easily be damaged by the slightest error. As the database extraction neared completion, Agent Thompson coordinated with intelligence agencies around the world to prepare for the massive counterintelligence operation that would be possible with the information Maria was providing. The data she carried could potentially neutralize Operation Nightingale's entire network and protect thousands of military personnel from unwitting exploitation. "We're almost done," Dr. Chen announced. "The final phase involves neutralizing the activation triggers and removing the communication protocols. This is the most dangerous part of the procedure." Maria felt a strange sensation as the neural modifications that had controlled her for years were carefully dismantled. It was as if chains she had never known existed were being broken, freeing her mind from constraints she had never consciously recognized. "I can feel it happening," she said, tears streaming down her face. "For the first time in years, my mind feels completely my own." When the procedure was finally complete, Maria lay still for several minutes, allowing her consciousness to settle into its newly liberated state. The monitoring equipment showed normal brain activity, and Dr. Chen's preliminary assessment suggested that the procedure had been successful. "How do you feel?" Dr. Chen asked as Maria slowly sat up. "Different. Free. Like I've been carrying a weight I didn't know was there, and now it's gone." Maria looked around the room at the faces of the people who had worked to help her. "Did we get what we needed?" Agent Thompson's expression was triumphant. "We got more than we could have hoped for. The information you carried provides enough intelligence to shut down Operation Nightingale's entire network. We can identify and protect all the other programmed personnel, and we can prevent the organization from using any of their embedded assets." Colonel Harrison entered the room as Maria was recovering from the procedure. "Sergeant Gonzalez, I'm pleased to report that your sacrifice has already begun to pay dividends. Based on the intelligence you've provided, we've initiated protective measures for over 300 military personnel who were identified as potential programmed assets." In the days that followed, the information extracted from Maria's memories led to one of the largest counterintelligence operations in military history. Operation Nightingale's network was systematically dismantled, its handlers arrested, and its remaining assets neutralized. The threat that had loomed over military security for years was finally eliminated. Maria's recovery was remarkable. Despite the risks of the experimental procedure, she retained all of her original memories and personality traits while being completely freed from the programming that had controlled her for so long. She became the first person to successfully overcome the type of neural modification that had been used on hundreds of others. The success of her case led to the development of standardized procedures for identifying and treating other victims of similar programming. Dr. Chen's team was able to help dozens of other military personnel recover from their hidden modifications, returning them to full awareness and control of their own minds. 6 months after the discovery of her tattoo's significance, Maria stood before a review board that would determine her future in the military. Her service record had been updated to reflect her extraordinary contributions to national security, and she had been recommended for commendation at the highest levels. "Staff Sergeant Gonzalez," the board chairperson said, "your actions in this matter represent the finest traditions of military service. You voluntarily risked everything to protect your fellow soldiers and your country. The board unanimously recommends you for promotion and assignment to whatever position you feel would best utilize your experience and expertise." Maria looked down at her arm, where the tattoo still remained as a reminder of her ordeal. She had chosen to keep it rather than have it removed, transforming it from a symbol of exploitation into a badge of survival and resistance. "Sir, I'd like to work with Dr. Chen's team," she said. "There may be other networks out there, other people who have been used the way I was used. If my experience can help identify and assist them, that's where I want to serve." The simple logistics patch on her uniform now represented not just her original military specialty, but her role in one of the most important security operations in recent military history. She had gone from being an unwitting pawn in a conspiracy to being a key figure in its destruction. As Maria left the hearing room, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. A routine medical examination had revealed that her entire understanding of her own life was incomplete. The recovery of her hidden memories had exposed a conspiracy that threatened national security. Her willingness to risk everything to help others had led to the neutralization of that threat. The tattoo on her arm would always remind her of the price of trust and the importance of vigilance. But it would also remind her that even when people try to use others for their own purposes, the human spirit has the power to break free and fight back. In the end, her simple logistics patch and The secret it had helped uncover had protected not just her fellow soldiers, but the very principles of freedom and service that had drawn her to the military in the first place.